Welcome to another live stream, Organized Stalking Buffet of Souls. And hopefully you guys can't hear the clothes dryer, which is basically right next to me. If it's too loud, let me know. I suppose I could turn it off and then finish up after the live stream, but it shouldn't be too bad because the fish tank is in here too. Nobody's ever complained about that. You can probably hear it. But anyway, welcome to another live stream, and we're going to talk about organized stalking and harassment. Targeted individuals are hunted down. There's a lot of different things that they're dealing with. I've mentioned the diversity that is out there involving the targeted individual community. Some people have different opinions on what is happening, but the reality is that they are being stalked. They are being illegally harassed, and in some cases persecuted to the point where they're either driven crazy, or they may spend years being dysfunctional, where they just have to kind of to go into their own world. And I've talked about that before. That's not such a bad thing, considering what's really going on. What are you going to do? And I've mentioned that before, that, when you get into the landscape of targeted individuals, it's, it's the secretary, it's the social worker, it's the dentist, the doctor, the teller at the bank, the barber, the butcher, the baker, it's the candlestick maker. No, I'm just kidding. But it's, it seems to be everywhere. And the things that targets are dealing with involve everything from directed conversations, street theater, workplace harassment, the people breaking into their house, covert drugging and poisoning, gaslighting, food tampering, noise campaigns, neighborhood harassment, fuming, slander campaigns, tag team, triangulation, where targets deal with that theatrical type of harassment where you don't know, you're being set up. And they're playing this little game with you, electronic harassment, V2K, cyber stalking, love bombing, narcissist abuse, ego infiltration, and they'll play with you that way too. And that's when you get into the game dynamic of this whole thing. They need that, because that's the way that they control your emotions and the trajectory of your thoughts, and that's how they dominate people. Because the whole idea of you playing a game, well, it's pretty ridiculous, because you're completely outnumbered. There's no chivalry involved. I've talked about that, and it's cheesy. Some of the stuff that targets are dealing with, it's like they end up showering in the dark. They feel like they're being surveilled all the time. There's always someone watching them, and the other things set in to where they just become, I don't know, agoraphobic or whatever. And you get enough honeypots or infiltrators that come into the target's life, and then they take you into that psychological demoralization to where you don't even want to try anymore. And I've talked about this too, that to try to avoid that demoralization tactic and keep yourself in a place that you have at least some environmental authority. It's even if you're in a workplace, and I've mentioned that, sometimes you have to take a job that no one else wants. Just if you might not be making a whole lot of money, but you're safe. You're not, because some of the stuff that targets deal with, it's like you go to work, it's like hell. You're trying to do your job, you're trying to concentrate, you're trying to think, and some targets are dealing with voices and all kinds of other weird things that are happening to them. And then on top of it, they're dealing with employees that are messing with them and sabotaging them. And it's just, you have to realize the potential that is there and the demoralization that can take place. But if you take one of those jobs that no one else wants, you might be the dishwasher or something like that. And you have your own little area back there. And, it's like the caller last night talked about setting up boundaries, right? And because they use plausible deniability to harass you. They use those covert techniques to make you look crazy or trigger you, and further the little campaign to smear your reputation and make you look like some kind of psycho nut or whatever. But if you got your own little area, and I've mentioned that, they are the ones that cross those boundaries. We also talked about the apartment complex. That's horrible. There's so much plausible deniability. I've mentioned before that, getting a security system with audio is important at that point, because, you have evidence, I mean, it would look kind of crazy for you to present that to your landlord if you had to. Maybe, depending on how you had the camera set up. If you had them set up like I have them set up in my house, they might start thinking something about you. But there's cameras everywhere in here. There's cameras everywhere inside the house, outside the house. And that's another thing that I don't even care anymore. But once that happens, it's your word against everybody else's. And there's people out there, they have the body cam, they have the dash cam for their vehicles. I think it's a great idea. And I just, I hope that, and there's people out there that do have some pretty compelling videos, but I hope somebody gets caught just red-handed, that they just get, the full meal deal, and we can have this whole thing exposed. And that's always the thing that at least that I was thinking. And it gets kind of depressing because it seems like they know, right? You'll get the aggressive attack. Excuse me. The environment is hostile. It might switch slowly for targets. It might, go into that area where the harassment is incremental, and then it goes into that crescendo effect, or it might just start off and just, bombard the target for that maximum infiltration into their psyche with that process of sensitization and controlling their emotions through trauma. Like I mentioned, the Tavistock Institute. But you get enough of those honeypots and you get enough of the infiltrators in, and then you get demoralized there, right? And so, for me, like I said earlier, it's okay to kind of go into your own little world or whatever because it's realistic for a target. It doesn't mean you have to stay there. But what I do is I have a protocol. If the stalking gets really heavy or whatever, then I'll take some of the things off my plate and just get the essential stuff up there and try to simplify my life to the point where I don't have a million things going on, because they'll try and do that too. And a lot of times when targets think the gang stalking is over, they'll get into maybe trying to further their career or other things, or jumping into maybe financial endeavors or whatever. And at that point, you've got some issues if they ramp up the stalking. And they do that. They like to wait until you have a project. Or sorry, I got a little distracted. There's a train coming through here. Usually they don't use that track. It's more for like a scrapyard, and it kind of freaked me out. Sorry, but I don't know if you guys can hear it. But it happens like a couple times a month. But anyway, that demoralization takes place through all these different facets. And when I kind of simplify my life, it seems to help out quite a bit, because they want you to just be pulling your hair out and going crazy. And, the whole idea is that they're controlling everything. And sometimes you just have to let some of those other things go. And it sucks. And a lot of targets can get frustrated about that. And it's okay to want good things. It's okay to want to have good things in your life, or, to live a normal life. But unfortunately, the wake up call for targets, at least most of them, like I said, this can happen a lot of different ways. It might be the government. It might be a cult. It might be, some kind of demonic thing, as we're getting into the buffet of souls, which, it really is, it's cannibalism, it's mental rape, it's attempted murder, it's disgusting, and there's no excuse for it. And they're after everyone. It's not just the targets, and that's something that you need to remember as you experience the sense of injustice that you're dealing with within the tyranny of this environmental nightmare that has been created, depending on what you're dealing with, is that they're not getting away with it. They seem to be getting away with it. That's going to be the rude awakening for them, and the undeniable criteria of their condemnation if they don't repent. Because what are they going to need? They're going to need mercy. And if they don't give people mercy and they do these horrible things, the kingdom of darkness knows that they own them. It's like some of the things I've talked about when it comes to the secret societies and all that. They do these things, some of the horrible things that we've been hearing about in the news or whatever. And it's some of that stuff is blackmail, but it's, when you get into the rituals and stuff like that, even in, black magic or witchcraft or whatever, hoodoo, voodoo or whatever, they have a type of contract in the sense that they have violated the legal framework of the universe, of God's perfect law. And in order to get out from under that, they're going to have to deal with the reality of, not only coming clean and admitting what has happened, but turning away and risking retaliation, from the hive, from the group, from the government, whatever it is that is going on. And they're going to have to deal, with the devil. They're going to have to deal with the kingdom of darkness. And a lot of people that I've run into some of these people, and they always say the same thing. You're the idiot because there is no getting away. And I'm like, well, okay, but what are you going to do later? If you're admitting that. If you're admitting that you believe in the evil and the darkness and the demonic nature of this, what are you going to do later? You're not getting out of anything, right? You're just trying to put it off, but inevitably there's no hope for you, right? You got today, maybe not. Maybe you got a week, maybe you got a year, maybe you got a decade, 2 decades, who knows? And I've seen some of these people leave the planet. And they had all kinds of plans, and they laughed at me. And some of them, two in particular, and I'm going to mention who they were. One of them was a stalker of mine that I dealt with all the way back from my childhood. It's like they set these things up. It's like they synchronize these things. It's like they know. And that sounds crazy, but I've talked about, the time dilation and other things. I made that video, multidimensional gang stalking, for those of you who are dealing with that logistical conundrum of trying to figure out how in the hell they set all these things up and how they seem to know all these things. And, the menagerie that you're dealing with, or even some of the things involved where targets believe that people are reading their mind and telepathy. I've been getting a lot of that stuff. I've dealt with a lot of that stuff myself. And some of it is, who knows? But, because you get into the, electronic harassment and the technology that's out there where, you get into this DNA resonance frequency and some other things that are going on where I've talked about, hypothetical scenarios where, they get something into your body and turn you into an RFID chip and, map the whole thing out, or whether it's some kind of demonic thing or whether it's an illusion based on that information to get you to believe something that's not true. And, when you get into bending space time and all that stuff, it's like, you could watch something in advance. It would be like a conversation that you had yesterday with someone, and maybe they forgot exactly what they were talking about. That happens a lot of times in a conversation. It's on the tip of my tongue. And you were going to say this, weren't you? And how'd you know? Because I can read your mind, right? But it would be a trick, right? And so some of that information is like that. And I've maybe I'm wrong, but I've tried to explain, like precognitive, dreams, or even, deja vu or other things involved in the occult, and, things involved in the book of Deuteronomy, where God allows the prophecies of a false prophet to come to pass. And it's there to test people to see whether, they're just going to be moved by that environmental tyranny, that stimuli, or they're going to believe the word of God, because that's an important test. Even when you get into some of the things involving reincarnation, or, conjuring up the dead or whatever, or, when people are getting into that framework, there's a lot of things that deceive them, even when you're dealing with the secret societies and the destiny philosophy, and they have prophecies for, families and lineages and, the specific things for each kid. I dealt with a lot of that stuff in the Masonic Rosicrucian order. And that's part of their framework, but they have things that do happen. This is what's going to be like for little Billy or little Sally. And lo and behold, all these things have been coming true within that framework, whether they are getting that information through some type of dimensional perspective or even allowed to test people with information from the Divine Council. If you guys have never heard of Dr. Michael Heiser, I would definitely check him out. The late Dr. Michael Heiser, and he, opened up the Dead Sea Scrolls and, the Ethiopian Book of Enoch and some other things, a Hebrew scholar, to talk about, what it is that's going on in the spiritual dimension, where you have information that is carried on, with these disembodied spirits that, according to him and others, and I've looked into this too, are really just the result of the Genesis 6 amalgamation of angels and humans, which is interesting for a lot of different reasons, because when people talk about reincarnation or they get into some of these things, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, it's like you're a soul that came to earth, like you existed before you existed, before, you became a fertilized egg in your mother's womb and you were born, you existed somewhere in a guff or something, but that's not biblical. And when you get into what happened when the Watchers rebelled, or however you're going to define the Nephilim, and they took the daughters of men, and what happened then? Well, when these individuals passed away, they were disembodied, but it created a problem, because they're not just going to go off to Sheol, right? And they're not going to go off to Tartarus or Tartarus, which is, a really, really, really bad place. That was when Jesus ran in to the demoniac or the Gadarene, and they said, "We know who you are. Don't send us to the abyss," right? Or to the deep. Same thing. Before our time. Don't torment us before our time. That's what they were talking about, because the only ones that were there were the ones that came down and did that stuff that they weren't supposed to do with Azazel and those other angels and so on and so forth, that rebelled and did that whole thing. But these beings, these unclean spirits, the familiar spirits, had come out of that whole thing. So but what's my point? They weren't souls somewhere that came down here. God didn't even ordain that whole thing. In fact, that was something that he didn't want to happen. The whole word unclean, a lot of people don't understand the Hebrew, that it's not talking about, because I've heard a lot of preachers or other people say, "You foul spirit," or whatever, and they go into these exorcisms where they don't even know what they're talking about. But the unclean, it's a reference to mixture. It's like they were forbidden to marry, outside, of the clan of the Hebrews, so on and so forth, out of the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or maybe outside of Ishmael and Esau. They did that for a while, but the point is that was where that came from. So it has nothing to do with, something that's dirty or, unclean or foul. It's just a mixture. And, these spirits have this information. Getting back to what I was talking about, it deceives people because they think, when this little kid or whoever, because I've seen a lot of videos about this stuff, starts talking, and they have information for 300 years, 500 years ago. And the only way they could know is if they were the reincarnated, spirit or soul of this individual, Henry VIII or whatever they're claiming they are, some kind of, war veteran from World War I, or, but it's not. They're really that it's a demonic thing, and it is designed to deceive people. And that's the criteria. And, like I said, when you get into the secret societies and all these things, or even when you get into gang stalking, when you get into the persecution of targeted individuals, they're after everyone, but they've got them. And unless they break away, because it's like when you get into Hebrews chapter 6, and it talks about people, if they excuse me, if they sin, they cannot be renewed to repentance. That's not talking about just regular sin. The sin of the Hebrews was apostasy, because they had been partakers and they saw the miracles right up there in the Jerusalem Council with the apostles, where Peter was binding and loosing. That's really where all that comes from. And what they do, well, they went back away from the gospel of Christ back to the old system, the old covenant, right? Because, it's like when Jesus said, he said, you have to hate your father and your mother more than me. He's not talking about hating your parents. That's a Hebrew idiom, meaning that they had to suffer persecution from their family to enter into the kingdom of heaven. If you're not willing to do these things, you can't be my disciple. You're not going to be worthy of me. Who is he talking to? He's talking to them, because what happened as soon as they went to these church groups, or they started to listen to the apostles and become disciples of Christ, well, their family persecuted them. They probably dealt with a lot of stalking and harassment at that point. They got excommunicated. Some of them were persecuted to the point where they were threatened with death, or they were going to lose their inheritance, and so on and so forth. But so they like that. I talked about that too. When you get into the church and you get into some of the wolves that are out there, and the things that targets talk about concerning gang stalking and the church, is that you got the same agenda. It's like a buffet of souls. They draw people in, and they use spiritual witchery to maybe give people feelings of euphoria, and then they have all the false doctrines, and they have all the shills in the congregation, and then they start going after certain people. They start targeting them. Oh, things aren't working out for you, and they think it's God, right? Or they get confused, or they become disillusioned because of all these false doctrines, and they finally start figuring out that these people aren't who they say they are, and they get attacked, and it doesn't seem to make sense. And then what do? They deconstruct, and they go away. They go away, and they want that. They want that whole thing. It's like the mark of the beast, right? So what's the thing about that is to deceive the elect, right? Which by law first mention is always the Jewish people, to take people captive. It's not just going to be them, but it's going to be everyone exposed to that whole thing. And if they do take it, it's going to be worse. And, when you get into the Dead Sea Scrolls, there seems to be different levels of punishment for different things. And so when you get into the elite, when you get into gang stalkers, when you get into this buffet of souls that we are dealing with, they've got the worst thing coming that you can imagine, right? And you need to know that. They're after them. They're after you. They're after everyone, right? And, their judgment, their hell, their torment, their punishment is going to reflect the things that they've done. And it's going to be, it's going to be multiplied. In fact, I had a caller a while ago talk about that it's going to be, I don't know how many different, times over it's going to be. We don't know. But, the Bible does say that it's going to be pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And these people are giving you all kinds of presents, aren't they? It's going to come back. It's going to come back eventually. And, they want double damage. And I've mentioned that before. They're not just going to, it's not just like these people can say, okay, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. And they want them to get their hands dirty. People wonder why individuals are in their business and harassing them and so on and so forth. They have to get involved, right? They're not just going to, go running through the countryside, collecting different types of beetles and, become some spiritual guru that's, talking to rocks, inanimate objects and trees. Some of those people end up doing, crazy stuff like that. But the stuff that you're dealing with as a target is proof. You wonder why they're doing it. What are they getting out of it? And then you have the individuals that seem to feel bad about it. It's like, well, what do you, I don't want to do this. Well, then why are you doing it? Because, sometimes it's intimidation. Sometimes they're getting things out of it. And, when you get into the secret societies, when you get into the cult and the people that sell out or subjugate according to, some of the doctrines in Eastern Orthodox or even the Catholic Church or other things involving, deals with the dark side. The old proverbial deal with the devil, to where they're going to do something and they're going to get something out of it. And I've experienced weird stuff like that myself, to where you have these infiltrators, you have a honeypot or whatever, maybe even people in your family. And it's like, then they start doing these things to you. And, there's hints all over. Why are you doing this? And then after they do this stuff, there's targets out there that say that, they've been attacked by certain individuals, like I've referenced earlier, where they kind of make fun of you and say, you're the idiot because you didn't conform. But then, they get whatever, they don't have persecution, or they seem to be okay for a while, and all of a sudden they're gone. And that there's probably a pretty, slim to no chance that they repented or that they're in right standing with the Lord. And that's a horrible, horrifying thing to think about. Right. But some of these people, after they do whatever they're going to do to you, and I've seen that kind of thing, and I've even heard them, hint around about money, and a lot of targets will get that life insurance policy thing, whether it's to make you, look delusional, or, feed into that persecutory delusion, or who knows what's going on behind closed doors after the things that you've witnessed as a target or an individual. You don't know, how is all this stuff working? Right. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. And at the end of the day, you're dealing with that reality. And I'm going to take a quick break here and put a link up, because I'm actually trying to do several things right now, but I thought I'd come in and do a live stream and try to multitask, to do a little dovetailing. I'm being bold, and I'll put that link up. Organized stalking and harassment, buffet of souls. And I got to check the laundry real quick. Let's see if I don't want to start a fire. Okay, they're not done. But there's so many things that play into this menagerie that targets are dealing with, and a lot of the tyranny and the environmental stress comes out of this whole idea that these people are getting something out of it. They're getting money. They're feeding on targets. It's like spiritual vampirism. A lot of targets speculate about the gift cards and all that stuff, but you just don't know. It looks like we have someone in. I'm going to go see who's in here, and I appreciate the interaction. Okay, we have Buck. It's been a while, and we're going to put you on the stage.
Can you hear
Welcome.
me?
Yes, I can.
You hear me?
I can now. Yes.
Awesome. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. Good. I'm it's good to hear. Good to hear from you. I've been having some positive things, some negative things. Lately in my personal life, it's kind of up and down.
Have you? Because I remember you said that your stalking had subsided. Has that changed?
It's in constant flux, man. Constant.
Okay.
Flux.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, on the average, it's kind of low, I guess. But like here, I consider it like weeding a garden, right? If I have like a spade to weed the garden, like a tool to weed the garden, to get out the shovel, to get out what do they call it? Those the weeds or whatever. I could use that shovel to dig out the weeds, but the weeds are going to come back. Ultimately, they're going to come back, right?
Okay.
That's kind of how I see it.
So you're dealing with, are you talking about the psychological effects of the trauma and stuff like that?
Not just the psychological effects, sir. Not just that. No.
Okay.
No. It's a little bit more than that. The way I see it, like, from what I understand about the program, okay, the architecture of the program, it's based on a system of proxies. Like, it's based on a system of agencies, groups of people, NGOs who are paid to do various things, various levels. Now, there's probably not one list. I'm sure there's multiple lists. I'm sure of it. I'm sure and everybody's targeting is a little different, as they say. But at the boots on the ground level, it's really, I think it's about money, right? I think it's about either money or even having certain accolades or having certain privileges or certain, like somebody wants a lady love. And then so they'll go and they'll do this, that, and the other. And then the system, the gang stalking system, will throw them an opportunity, right? And and so they might not pay them with money, but they pay them with like something. There's some kind of value that they get out of it.
Doors will start to open up for them, and opportunities will magically appear for them. Huh?
Correct. If they obey blindly.
Right. Right. No, that's I've heard that. I've experienced that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing I've noticed is that it's an architecture. It's an architecture of proxies at the higher level. I think it's not about money so much. I think it's more about control and about suppression of the truth movement. How people want to do the truth thing.
Okay.
Like, how it's like people want to. It's like a great awakening is occurring on the earth in a way. It's like people are waking up to various truths that we didn't know before. I mean, 20 years ago, man, it's so different, right? And then but that's increasing exponentially. And at the uppermost levels, or maybe the deepermost levels, or the most powerful most levels, I think that it's really about, I call it the bottleneck. But at the deepest levels, I think that what it's really about is obtaining energy, like chi, prana. It's like a feeding system. It's like a big old feeding trough. And they feed off the TIs, and they get their energy. They get them all huffed up, ticked off, angry at each other, and and they just get to the point where they're angry all the time, and so that anger gets siphoned away, and their chi, their prana gets siphoned away, and it's like a feeding. It's like it goes up the chain of command, because the people who are gang stalking are gang stalked themselves. They're not.
That's
free.
interesting. That's
They're
interesting.
slaves.
So it's like so the people that are becoming involved, they feed on them differently because they kind of own their soul, but then they have this little grid out there of people that they torture to kind of create that, is what you're saying.
I believe that's what's going on, sir. I believe that's what's going on.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's like that's where the matrix kind of coalesces and kind of gets most cramped. You know how people show, like, there's these pictures of like this pyramid, right? And at the lowest base levels are like the most people are at the base of the pyramid, the least people are at the top of the pyramid, but it really resembles an hourglass because it's like the way I think of it is I think it resembles an hourglass because at the top of the pyramid is like the bottleneck, and then it expands out into the greater cosmos. And then I think that's the power structure. It's like ultimately the bottleneck is right where this melange of characters, this international characters that are restricting the flow of God's goodness to the world, the blessings and the knowledge that we need to survive and live and thrive, restricting that. And then you have the cosmos, which is kind of like a larger thing. So it's like an hourglass shape. It's not like a pyramid in my mind. It's like an hourglass.
So you're seeing a type of funnel effect, and it just sucks everything, and then it puts it into reserve, a type of reserve. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but at the kind of like the bottleneck of the hourglass where the sand would go through, the blessings or whatever. It's like it's occupied by like a network of high-powered criminal intending folks. That's the way I see it. That's the way I see it.
So your landscape is you're looking at the hierarchy of the world. You're looking at the structure of the infrastructure, not only of the nations but the governments, and you're seeing the corruption. You're seeing the boots on the ground. You said, and then you have the compartmentalization of those things. And so you're seeing that now that fits with what we're talking about. It's like a feeding frenzy. It's like a buffet of souls, right?
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, man. But I mean, I don't want to laugh to make it sound like it's okay, because it ain't.
No, I mean, but what else could be going on? What else? Why else would they do these things, right? I mean, there's experimentation. Yeah, there's that. We know that. But at the same time, some of this stuff, it's like when I hear targets, they're like, oh, they're spending billions of dollars to do this to me. It's like, maybe not. Maybe there's something else going on,
Well, here's the thing, man. There's another component to this too, obviously. But there's the idea that they can print money out at the highest, most level thing, the Federal Reserve is a private institution, right? It's run by the same people that run the major oil industries. I hear same families, and so from what I understand, they can print out money. They can they can manufacture money, and they can. It's weird. I don't know. I don't fully understand the process, but from what I hear,
when you get into the secret societies, they have clout that goes beyond money. Yeah, they no, really. I mean, it's beyond.
Yeah.
It's beyond. You can't even calculate it with silver or gold. It's really creepy when you get into it.
Mm.
Gary Wayne he'd gone. I think it was in the year 2000. He tried to calculate that out, and you have a just ridiculous amount. That's when you get into the fiat currency, and now people have just got all this land and everything, and you got Agenda 21, where they literally try to put a dollar value on the water and the air and everything else, because it's commandeering everything. It's taking over everything and putting a price tag on everything.
What does commandeer mean? What does commandeer mean?
To acquisition. In other words, yes. So they're basically claiming their stake within not only the natural resources of the planet, but the future of the human beings that live on the planet. Yeah,
brother, I think that in about 5 years, 2031, we're going to be in it's going to be a very different world. We're going to go through some changes here that are going to be so drastic. If you thought the past few years was pretty bad, I mean, I think that the changes that are coming here soon are going to be more drastic. But in the next 5 years, we're going to be living in such a different world. If we survive and stuff, I pray we survive. But I just but
let me ask you this, because I've heard this. What makes you believe that? I'm trying to. I mean, you could be right, but why? Where are you coming up with it?
So, okay, that's a good question. So I saw this interview on the channel. And I'm not going to here to mention any channel's names or any people's names.
No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Got to respect the rules. And so based on that channel information, based on what the person was saying and the suggestive references that the person was saying, and based on what the information the person was putting forth and the secret knowledge that they were putting forth or alluding to, based on the sense that of protection that the man felt from the other man in the conversation, because there's three people in the conversation, and so based on those characteristics that I observed, it seemed to me that like this guy knew exactly about.
Let me ask you this, because we're kind of, people are a little confused about what you're talking about, Buck, and I appreciate your theory. But the thing is, because you don't want to mention the name, so you're having a hard time with this whole thing. But the basic theory, and I know you're trying to obey the rules, is so the world entering into another phase, like you said, where it's going to be tough, but it's going to get better, is based on, again, let me in on that one.
So it's going to get real difficult, I think, in about it's going to be like a golden age ultimately.
Okay, well, that's what I was getting at, because here's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, when you get here's the issue, and I knew I had a suspicion that's where you were going, and unfortunately, that's like a delusion of the elite. Okay.
Really?
Yes. So this is their golden age, right? And so, like, when you get into some of the stuff that we've heard about, which for some reason it never seems to pan out for the people that they say they're trying to help with extracellular matrix, or with the gene therapy, or different things that are going to help people. They end up turning them all into weapons, or it just never gets down to the public. And with these things have been around for a long time, where the fact that you have technology that is being used on targeted individuals that they've obfuscated for decades, right? They always plan to use them to control people and use them as weapons, or the exponential framework that we are looking at with, the things that have been exposed, not only at MK Ultra, but Artichoke, Mockingbird, Stargate, and other programs that are just nothing more than, controlling people ad populum, to manipulate them and turn them into cattle. And this golden age is for the elite, in other words. And so they believe that this is their age of Aquarius. This is their age. Some people refer to Pisces or whatever. But really, to them, it seems that way. But the thing that I've found is that really that the whole thing is almost over. Right. And, even when you get into the biblical criteria that, at the return of the Lord or that great and terrible day of the Lord, they're going to, they want the mountains to fall on them. They want to hide from the wrath of the Lamb and so on and so forth, because, they had no idea. And when you get into the polytheism of the secret societies, that's what they believe. This is their golden age. But when you get into the Dead Sea Scrolls or even the biblical prophecies, whether it's the book of Daniel or the book of Revelation, or other things from the apostles, you see people being saved, and you see people who are being refined, but out of great trouble. And when you get into the Dead Sea Scrolls, now, at least according to that timeline, we're about a year or two into the first 7-year period, which is a Shemitah of the final Jubilee. So we're almost at the end of a 2,000-year period, meaning that at least according to them, the first 7 years will be the best, which we're about a year or two into that. After that, it's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse. So I don't know where I don't know who you're listening to, but it sounds very similar to the delusion of the elite. I wanted to put.
Well, that's helpful information. So you're saying that the elites believe that they're going to be living in a golden age.
They already think that they are in it. That's where you get the 1,000 points of light of the New World Order. That's the Illuminati. It's everything. And when you get into the infrastructure of the secret societies, starting out with the infrastructure of the Freemasons, going all the way back to ancient Egypt with the secret knowledge and hidden wisdom of the Rosicrucians and all that stuff from the all-seeing eye from Egypt. That moves through time, through these things, up into the hierarchy involving lineages, all the way up into the royals, down to the Committee of 300, which a lot of people think are really at the top. They're not. And then it goes down to the Council the Council of 33 is above them. And it goes down into the Illuminati and the Rosicrucians, and then just, the people that have no idea. And then fraternities that are just part of the infrastructure. But they believe that.
Well,
and so... Yeah, so that's go ahead.
If I'm deceived, that would really suck.
Well, that's the point. That's what I'm getting at. You don't want to believe the lie that they're believing. I mean, it's good to be positive. I mean, but think about it. How is it going to get better if people are getting worse and being darkened in their understanding? It's what's going to get worse. It might seem to get better, and that's part of the delusion that they have.
Well, to respond to your question, sir, I think I do have multiple sources kind of pointing to it, but why does it? Okay, so it has to get worse sometimes to get better. Sometimes.
Well, I'm not saying that the philosophy there isn't there. I mean, sometimes in a person's life it has to get worse for you, but as far as prophetically, it is not going to get better until the Lord returns. And, even when you get into some of the false doctrines out there, like post-millennial theology, is that this is the millennium and we're going to make it better until Jesus finally, it's going to get so good that Jesus is going to return. Well, the Bible didn't say that. It's going to get worse. And then it's going to, love is going to wax cold and people are going to be, evil is going to be worse. And so there's a bit of a contradiction there, right? The worse is, depending on your philosophy, based upon the exponential takeover and chain reaction of the kingdom of darkness until the return of the Lord, unless you don't believe that. Do you believe in Jesus Christ?
What about Jesus Christ?
Do you believe in him?
Like that he claimed to be a savior? I don't know if I do or not.
Okay, well that's why, that's going to be a problem, because you don't know the prophecies involved in the Bible, obviously. So
well, I've read a lot of the Bible before. I read a lot of the scriptures, and I don't know if I early on
let me help you out. Okay, a lot of people don't know who the Jews are. Who are the Jews? The Jews were elected to bring forth the Messiah, which was the promise from the Garden of Eden, the seed that would take back the world, the second Adam. And so when people are referring to the Jews, there's three different groups. One, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and the Essenes. And I know you've referred to the Essenes before, haven't you?
Yeah, but unless God shows me, I'm not going to be enlightened. Do you know what I mean? Like
Joe, no, you're not making no. It has nothing to do with that. You're chosen in the sense that the Jews were chosen as the not salvifically, they were chosen as the literal physical seed that the Messiah would come through. And the prophecies go back to the Dead Sea Scroll that there would be a woman with child that was a virgin, right? That was the prophecies that the Sadducees and the Pharisees obfuscated. The Essenes held to the solar calendar system, which held within the time clock of the prophecies and the old Levitical law. And when they went into Babylonian exile, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they departed and went to the lunar calendar. So what's my point? I'm about to show you. Okay. So do you have a calculator with you?
I have one on my computer.
Okay. Well, okay. So you can do this very simply. Okay. So when you look at the timeline, you have the Babylonian exile beginning at the time the word came down to Jeremiah in 605 BCE. The temple was destroyed in 586. They took sacrifices up to the high places until 583. And then in late 538, the call for them to go back to the Holy Land was there, but they had already been living there, so they had to organize their journey. They had to, travel 1,000 miles. They had to sell everything. So they didn't get back till 536. Now, if you look at the code or the whole schematic, is that the first seven is this. Okay, so here's what I'm about to show you. That the regathering over in Israel was prophesied by Daniel. Okay, but the angel gave him this prophecy. So what is it? The first seven is not a 7-year period like people think the 7-year tribulation period is going to, but that's not really biblical. There's going to be a final 7 years, and that's going to involve a lot of the things in the book of Revelations. But the seven is from the end of the Babylonian exile to the regathering. Because why? Because they went out into the wilderness, remember? In Revelations, the dragon was going to pour out the water out of his mouth and chase him into the wilderness and all these things. And they're going to go and they're going to be safe. And then they're going to regather, right? As Jeremiah said, you're going to have a future and a hope. So do the math. The lunar calendar is 360 days times 7, which is 2,520. But you have to convert that to the solar calendar by multiplying it times 0.9857, which gives you 2,484 years. Do the math. From 536 to 1948 is exactly 2,484 years. That's not a coincidence, my friend.
You said that's from 536 AD? That's BCE?
No. 536 BCE. To 2,484 years to 1948 AD. That's exactly 2,484 years. I just gave you everything you need to know.
Well,
every calculation is the same. The abomination of desolation is the same. The wing of abominations is the same. It's in the middle of the seven.
I'm a Luke 10:24 kind of guy. I'm a Luke 10:20, 23.
Okay, well, like I said, you have to understand the biblical prophecies being fulfilled, because if you don't understand that, like the elite, they're going to believe the golden age delusion. So that's why I said I could see the red flag when you're talking about that. You're believing their lie. You don't want to get sucked into that, do you?
Well, I don't if it's a lie, but I don't think
it is. I just proved it. How is it possible for them to regather in 1948 if the prophecies of Daniel, the 70 weeks of Daniel, aren't true? I just showed you exactly what it is. The 70 weeks of years. That's what it is.
Well, let me say this, okay? Because this is important. When the Israelites, when they wandered in the desert, right? And this is kind of like akin to gang stalking, because when people are being gang stalked, they are wandering, in a sense. They're not like, they don't have a purpose. If you have a purpose, you're probably more targeted than if you didn't have a purpose.
Are you talking about the ones that didn't want to obey God and they ended up wandering for 40 years
Yeah,
until he died? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, yes, sir. Let me just finish this thought. So they were wandering in the desert, right? And the reason why they kept wandering was because they didn't adhere to the first commandment was to put Alpha Omega first.
Well, there's a little, I get it, but they didn't want to go take you okay. So here's what happened. So there was a lot of issues that happened when they came out of Egypt, and they were there for over 400 years, but they didn't want to go take over the land of milk and honey because they were worried about and I talked about that in the beginning of the video. They were worried about the amalgamated ones. They were worried about the giants that were over there. That was the whole thing that happened when they went over to send spies over there to see what was there. They saw those individuals inhabiting that place, and they didn't want to do it. And so they were basically cursed at that point, and God had started over with their children after that for people who were under the age of 20, which is actually the accountability age. It's not 12, it's 20. Yeah.
Okay, so let me make this point because this is important. Okay, when you get to heaven, when I get to heaven, or you get to heaven, I get to heaven, and the Creator looks at our lives, right? And it looks at our lives and takes a look at who we are as a person, right? So the Creator's not going to say, well, I don't really know what the Creator's going to say, first off, but I don't think that the Creator would say, like, your knowledge is good. Okay, you're not, in the sense that, like, your knowledge is sufficient. It's good. I'm very proud of the fact that you have knowledge, but I think the Creator would say it's because of your love and how you help the poor, the homeless, the needy.
Okay, well, okay, Buck. Okay, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, because what you're illustrating is action, right? You're illustrating something that's tangible, and that's important to know, because there's a bit of a Protestant delusion out there which says that even when you get into Ephesians 2:8, it's not by work lest anyone should boast, but that's not talking about good works like what you're talking about. That's talking about works of the law. So you can't get circumcised, and you cannot obey dietary laws of the old covenant and enter into the kingdom of heaven. That's really all that means. But let me say this, that, I just gave you evidence, literally irrefutable evidence of proof of the God of Israel and of Christ, the prophecy of Christ. Let me give you another one. So if you have the 490 years of disobedience for the Babylonian exile, you take away 7 years, that's 483, and you convert that to the solar calendar, which is 0.9857, and you have the decree of Artaxerxes at 444. What's that? That's 32 AD, dude. Okay, what did Jesus tell people when he walked into the triumphal entry? You missed the time of your visitation. You should have known. You should have known that I was coming. Because why? Because Daniel prophesied it. They could have, but they went to the lunar calendar. Are you listening to me, brother man?
Well, the thing of it is like you're talking very technical things, and I'm not really following you technically.
Okay, there's a calendar that is based on the timeline of prophecy, and it is not the lunar calendar. It is the solar calendar of the Essenes. You talked about the Essenes. I know you know who they are.
So 1 Corinthians, I think it's 2:11. It says, no man can fully grasp God's thoughts except God's own spirit show them.
Well, that is talking about the carnal people in Corinthians who were not able to understand Paul's teachings because they were carnal. They were immoral. They were like, they were not ready to take the sermons that he had to give them because they were still drinking milk like babes. They were not mature. They were not mature.
We can't get into heaven through our works and we can't get into heaven through
No. You did the mistake. That's works of the law, dude. You can't
get. Man, excuse me. I said the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm saying we can't get into heaven through what we know. or knowledge won't get us into heaven.
No, you get into relationship. You have a relationship with the Lord, and you that's the communion, right? I'm the door. I'm the bread of life, so on and so forth. If that's why I said if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to get in there, dude.
I didn't say that, man. Don't put words in my mouth, man.
Okay, well, you said you didn't know.
Well, I said I don't know.
Okay, well, that you got to know. I'm trying to help you out. I'm not trying to shoot you down. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying that you don't have to. You don't have to have knowledge to get into heaven.
You have to know. You have to know the Lord. You have to know the truth about. You have to know the truth about the Messiah.
You have to be loving and kind and love God.
Well, yeah, but you're not going to be able to do that unless. And yeah, but you can have the fake righteousness and love that comes out of regulation from the seducing spirits or a false religion, but that's gonna pass away. You have to have, you have to be in Christ, and you have to have faith. You have to at least believe, if nothing else.
I don't want to alienate your audience, sir, but I think that in terms of beating gang stalking, it is a matter of getting to heaven. You have, and when gang stalking is happening, it's a lower realm. It's a lower hell. And so to get out of that hell, you have to get to a higher realm. In order to do that,
well, what do you mean? What do you mean you're going to get to a higher realm? What are you talking about?
Well, you're interrupting me. I mean, I'm trying to explain it. I don't want to be interrupted, sir.
Well, you're not following the biblical criteria. You're promoting another religion, which is against the rules. I already warned you about that.
Well, I didn't know.
Yeah, so that's you. Yeah, I have to interrupt you at that point, dude. Okay, but I appreciate you coming in, Buck, and I'm gonna have to let someone else in, and I appreciate you coming in, and I'm gonna take you off the stage now, and we have someone out here that I have not seen yet. Oh, wait a minute. Welcome to the live stream. Hello, are you there? I thought someone was there. Maybe we'll have to go back in. We have another guest. Let's try to bring them in.
Can you hear me?
I can, and I'm trying to get the other individual off the stage. Are you still there, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, welcome to the live stream.
Thank you, Doctor. It's good to hear your voice again and to hear that you're in good health. I've been praying for you, and I appreciate all that you've done to bring clarity to a very complicated and complex subject.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
We spoke a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. How are you doing?
You know what? I'm in good spirits.
That's great. That's great.
It is. And I'm going to bring a little levity to this program. This program kind of reminds me of a joke that my deceased brother had told me just before he died. And I think you're going to get it, and everyone and the audience is going to understand it. The joke starts with a man driving a car who picks up a hitchhiker. The hitchhiker gets in and tells him how far he's going, and he says, "Yeah, I'm going by that town. I'll drop you off." Well, the drive goes, and they're playing a little music on the radio, and there's a red light. And the driver drives right through this red light. And the passenger grabs the dashboard and says, "Hey, wait a minute, you just running through a red light. What's wrong with you?" The driver says, "Don't worry about this, man. My brother always does this." So he relaxes. A couple of miles later, another red light. Driver floors it, goes right through that red light. The passenger freaks out. He says, "Oh my gosh, you just ran 2 red lights, man. What's wrong with you?" He says, "Don't worry about it, man. Don't worry about it. My brother always does this." Third red light, this guy just barrels right through it like there's no problem. The passengers, "Let me out, let me out. I want out of this car. Let me out." Driver says, "What's the matter? My brother always does this." He says, "I'll give you one more chance. I'm just a couple miles from my destination. Just give me this." So they go a little bit further, and there's a green light, and the guy slams on the brakes. The driver locks him up, and the passenger's perplexed. He looks at him. He says, "You just ran 3 red lights, and you stop at a green light." And the driver says, "Yeah, my brother might be coming."
Yeah. He's not looking out for anyone else, just that guy. Huh?
Just that guy. And that's what this tyranny has subjected us to. We will
Yeah.
run red lights and red lights, but that green light, we will not trust it.
Oh, that's a good one because they do that. They train us that way. We're like Pablo's dog, right? They want us to expect things that are abnormal, and everyone else just looking at us like we're nuts. You know?
Absolutely. So that's kind of like how I look at like my targeting right now is that, it's gotten they're throwing, and I think a lot of it has to do with like what's happening in the world right now. They're trying to throw everything at the people that they want to get a reaction out of for whatever reason. I
Oh yeah,
haven't quite
yeah.
pieced it
Even the people,
together.
even not the gang stalking victims. There's all kinds of stuff out there. They're playing with everybody's head now. Exactly, just like you said.
Absolutely. And the point is that you have to, like you said in one of your earlier videos, you have to trust yourself and have that internal frame of reference that I am not crazy. This is happening, and I have to deal with this. Whether it is, some people may say this is the testing of the faith, the trial by fire, and God knows I'm not claiming to be a Bible scholar, but I spent 10 years of my life trying to disprove the Bible. I went through every length to disprove that it's just a fairy tale, it's a fiction. And I'm going to say 90% of what you are eschatology professing is very accurate.
Oh,
I don't
thank you
agree
very
with it.
much.
I don't agree with everything, but I say that you're pretty spot on as far as what I couldn't disprove about that book. I have found that, okay, take for example the Mona Lisa, the painting. Everyone says that that was painted by Leonardo da Vinci. There were some skeptics. Well, there is a mountain of evidence that could fill stadiums that prove that Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa. So I said, okay, if that's the same thing, I should be able to prove that about the Bible. And I went out to disprove it. And I came out with there are 2, 3, 4 football stadiums full of evidence that support that what the Bible claims to be fact, or the stories in it, the people in it, all the events, the worldwide will acknowledge that there was a flood event that wiped out most of living forms, and there are wild animals and sea life that exist or remains of them that exist in places that should not have whale bones and seashells, that there was some dramatic flood.
Yeah.
So there's a mountain that there are more substantiating evidence. If the Mona Lisa was proved by a landslide of evidence that Leonardo da Vinci painted it, there is even more evidence that the Bible is accurate in the stories and the people in it. As a matter of fact, they not recently, I believe it was 1 or 2 years ago, had uncovered a grave marker of Pontius Pilate.
Oh yeah, there's a
Who
whole plethora of stuff out there that literally is just in everyone's face. Not only the prophecies being fulfilled, but archaeological evidence. Absolutely.
So that ended the debate for me. I was no longer skeptic. I was
Yeah,
only
the thing, a
skeptic
lot of
because
people get hung up. A lot of people get hung up on, the fossil record or whatever. And there's different ways that people can, determine that. Some people go to the gap theory or whatever. But really, you can create a fossil in a lab by adding minerals. So if you have a
we,
flood with
we,
mineral rich sediment and the aquifers of the deep breaking forest, you can have fossils in a shorter period of time than 50 million years. Even when you get into the soft tissue found in the bones of, I think it's a Triceratops or a T Rex up in Fort Peck, Montana. They found soft tissue. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And also seashells in the deserts of Saudi Arabia. Where they're like, there was never an ocean here.
yeah. There's
Why
all
are we?
kinds of evidence out there, and then you get into the evolution where they throw billions of years at this whole thing, and it's just how much faith does it take to believe something like that?
But see, that evolution that was only brought in by Darwin right when the Jesuits they started that Codex 3 Bible from the Vatican to
Yeah,
try to uh, diminish the deity of God and the sanctity of Christ and the virgin birth. They did all of that at the same time when they released their codex, the latest codex, to try to disprove that Martin Luther, when he released the King James version of the Bible to the public, that they did not want that credited.
yeah. There's a lot of things out there that have come against the truth to obfuscate that. You said things are going well for you, and I'm glad to hear that. As your stalking diminished.
No,
No,
it's
okay,
ramped up. It's
okay.
ramped up, but I'm fighting spiritually because I've realized that I was like, as I said before, I was a college student studying criminology, trying to become a policeman, and at one point you pointed it out to me, and I didn't point. It took me hours of dissecting because I listened to that podcast that we did a couple of times to decipher exactly when I had gone to that Masonic lodge and had someone say that they would stand for me. Now, at the time of that conversation, I didn't understand what that meant. So I looked up what standing for someone meant in the Masonic lodge. And there is a significance when someone says they will stand for you. Are you
I don't
aware of
know
that?
the inner workings of that. What is that anyway?
That is kind of like okay, let's look at the Italian mob. When someone said that this guy's a good earner, he's a street soldier, I'm going to vouch for him to be a made man. He's a good earner.
Oh, okay.
We
All right.
want to bring him up to another level where now he has power, a little bit of respect, and is inside the organization rather than working for the organization. That's when they vouch for you. They are saying, I'm going to put myself out here for this person. I vouch for them
So you've
as
been you've
someone.
been you've been recruited, but then you've also been weighed in the balance, and they're going to try and bring you into the inner circle.
And I didn't discover that until after that last conversation, because when I was reciting in my mind that conversation I had with that gentleman that I met who was a civil servant, he said, I would stand for you. I didn't know what that meant until later on. Like I said, I started reviewing what I said, and I discovered that that word stand is a very powerful meaning to that organization. Pretty much says, I'm going to vouch for you. So I'm discovering more and more as, like I said, the first conversation I was all over the place because there was a lot of stuff that I had never spoken of, and I could not really put it into words. For example,
Yeah.
the other night I was trying to get on with this Twilight Zone episode. You're not going to believe this, Doctor. You're not going to believe this. This is when I knew that we were living in some kind of a dimensional shift that was supernatural, but yet physical at the same time. Now picture this. I have a distinct commuter car, and I drove this every day to my job and back. And this one night, I think I was low on gas. That's what it was. I was low on gas. I went to this kind of out in the way gas station off the highway because I knew that light was on, and I was like, I'm not going to even try to get home with this warning light on. So I'm going to pull over and I'm going to get gas. I was the only car that pulled in. My make and model. It's very distinct. Color, make, model. I pulled in to the pump. There was a police car that was parked in the red zone, as they always seem to do. And I've been told, because I've been around first responders, and they're like, if it's there, we'll take advantage of it because we don't really care, and no one's going to say nothing. So he's in the red zone, and I go in and I pay, and I think I got a bag of potato chips, a sandwich, or something to eat on the way home. And I looked out the window, and suddenly, there were about 10 cars. Every single one of them, my hand to God, I would swear on a stack of Bibles. Every single car that pulled into that parking lot was the exact same make and model as my car.
Now that's when your brother was questioning you, or is that another time?
That was just 4 years ago.
Okay, because you had that experience with your brother, is that correct?
No, I had an experience with my brother where he had gone back to get a reference for a townhouse he was going to sublet, and needed a reference, and they found out that the previous landlords were dead. And when they renovated the apartment, they had found pictures of certain people on altars, candlelit, and mine was one of them.
Right, I remember that. I thought that there was an incident where he saw these vehicles with certain license plates. Maybe I'm confusing your testimony with someone else. I apologize for that.
No. You've talked to a lot of people in that, and it's understandable. But that was when he made the connection. But whatever it was, I could not get details out of him because he was spooked.
Yeah.
I asked him what specifically, and he said, I don't want to talk about it. I don't know what's going on, but this is something that I went to get mail, and the residents who recognized me and knew I lived there, because it had only been a short time since he'd left, he'd went back to say, look, I got a lease for a new place. I need to say that I was here for 5 years and have a reference. And they said they're dead. The grandmother, the father, the woman, and their 10-year-old, they've all been deceased.
My God.
I know. I asked him for details, and he wouldn't give it. I said, "How?" He said, I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to tell you that when they renovated that place, they pulled out several altars that were candle lit and had photographs, and yours was one of them.
That's enough to creep anyone out, and I believe that stuff because I've seen it. I've seen these things, and I've caught these people doing rituals, and I didn't know what they were doing. And you're ignorant to these things, and then you see all these things that are going on, and you see who people really are, and then it really makes you wonder who you're really dealing with out there in the world.
And then it was just after that was like I would walk down the street and have every single person lay eyes on me. Every single person I passed laid eyes on me, and it was like the Twilight Zone. But back to this gas station, I saw a car that matched my make and description drive off And I told the cashier, hey, someone just stole my car. And the cop, he was working the coffee machine, trying to get a good cup. He couldn't quite fix it. He was having trouble with it. He was working with it. And he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, hey, that's not your car. I saw you when you pulled in. Your car's still at that pump. I don't know what happened, but there are several makes and models of the same car you're driving here. I don't know
Oh
what.
gosh. Yeah.
And that was another brick that solidified that not only did I see this, but there's a uniformed officer who's trying to work this coffee machine, and he saw the same thing.
Yeah. And that's I've talked about that with targeted individuals. Even when you're having an aggressive attack or whatever, those are the things you anchor yourself to, because you wonder if you're just hallucinating. You wonder if you're just reading into all this stuff, and it becomes a type of environment to where it doesn't seem possible. And so when you deal with that plausible deniability, or when targets deal with the subtle stuff, and then it just switches or goes on and off, you have to anchor yourself. You have to anchor yourself to things like what you're talking about, where it's obvious, where other people are seeing it, and you put a mental note, because otherwise they're going to make you think you're nuts, you know?
And to give you credit, you have helped me, because at one point I believed everyone was in on it. You could not have convinced me otherwise. You could have dragged me over broken glass, and I would have swore everyone's in. Everyone's in. This is a game. They're playing with my. This is a game. But see,
Yeah.
that cop that tapped me on the shoulder, that proved to me that, see, he didn't know what was going on it, but he knew I was panicked enough that I thought my car was stolen. And he was like, no, 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 no. I saw what happened. A lot of cars pulled in here just a minute ago, same make and model. Your car is still at the pump because I saw you come out of it. I'm a
And
cop.
he
I
might have,
see
a
everything.
lot of people talk about the good guys. He might have been one of the good ones,
I believe he was, because he scratched his head and he said, I've never seen nothing like it either. He
Wow.
laughed.
Yeah. Well, that's confirmation for you. And how weird is something like that, right? Because they wanted to make you look crazy, and he stopped you from freaking out.
Absolutely stopped me from freaking out.
Yeah,
And then
that's good.
the last point I'm going to make is that, I want to speak to your last caller. Man, I just hope that you investigate the Word of God, read the Word cover to cover. There's a lot of truth that Dr. De facto is trying to get out to the public. It's not an attack against your intelligence. You seem very intelligent. You spoke very eloquently. I enjoyed hearing your testimony. But I just invite you, as someone who was once a non-believer until I started investigating, and the prophecies line up, timelines line up. There's some things where I don't 100% agree with you, but you're not that far off to where I'm going to say I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The thing is, if you got to admit, sir, what you don't know, and go from there. And then you build on frame by frame. Okay, this is what. And the thing is, we're not saved by works. We are saved by only one thing, and that is belief in the Messiah of Jesus Christ, the personhood of God who came in flesh, who died for the sins of humanity that all might be saved, who rose on the third day after being crucified and took the keys of death and hell and eternal life. That is the only way, because we are not saved by works. I can have a day where I can do everything perfect,
Well, that's and I
and
tried
then
to
I can
explain.
have a
I
day
tried to.
where I
I
do
get what you're
everything
saying.
wrong.
Yeah, I get what you're
Everything
saying.
wrong. And I'm not condemned by that, because I know,
No,
God, I may have done, because I've gotten into that point where I quit drinking and I started to think I was so much better than a guy sitting by the railroad tracks drinking out of a paper bag. And it was the Holy Spirit that like tapped me on the shoulder and said, dude, Are you kidding me? You were there like a year ago. You think
Yeah.
you're sanctified because you've been on your knees praying for 90 days and you fasted now, and now you're starting to see that you want to be obedient? That was you not too long ago. And you're going to say, I'm glad I'm not that guy.
Right, right. Yeah,
There's
we're hypocrites in that way. I just wanted to illustrate the fact that when Ephesians 2:8 is talking about works, it's not talking about good works. And so you're right. It's talking about works of the law. And works of the law, you're not going to be. See, people don't know how to understand Paul's writings.
I
And
don't want to be judged by my works. I do
well, you're
not
not.
want to be
No,
judged.
that's not what it says. It's talking about works of the law, Romans 3:27, circumcision, dietary laws, the old covenant. It's not talking about good works.
None of that saves
Got to
you.
know that.
None of that saves you. None of that will save you.
And I'd like to thank you again. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we take you off?
Oh, I could talk to you for hours. But
Unfortunately, we're at the end. We're
at
at
the
the
end.
end. Yeah.
I will look forward to having another conversation with you because so much has happened that
And we will have you
I'd
in.
like.
We will have you in.
And again, I'm going to end this with a blessing to you and the family in the name of Jesus Christ, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that whatever happens, we must have faith and follow through. This thing will end. This thing will be exposed, and we will all be vindicated in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. And thank you for the good work that you do, Doctor. I appreciate you having me on. God bless you, sir, and I'll talk to you later.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on. Come back anytime. And wow, what a live stream. And we went into the spiritual aspect of this pretty deep tonight because there is a lot of things going on within organized stalking and harassment. There are things where targets are being experimented on. There are things involved in the government. But when you get into the hierarchy, not only of the puppetry that's out there within the things that we've illustrated, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Rosicrucians, the Committee of 300, the Council of 33, the Scottish Rite, up into the Royals, that you have something beyond that. And some of the things that targets deal with, people speculate. In fact, I heard a testimony earlier today where someone was talking about the government spending millions or, whatever, tens of millions of dollars to just, kind of follow them around and freak them out. And they just couldn't get away. And that could be, it could be that, but it also could be something that's more spiritual. And then, you're dealing with the hive mind. And I've talked about that before. And you're dealing, with the whole idea that, human beings are a commodity, that these people are doing things maybe for monetary benefits. If it's a professional outfit, maybe a private investigating firm, they're getting paid cold cash. But some of the people that you're dealing with, you'll notice that they are probably not part of the Illuminati. They're probably not part of the CIA, and they're probably not very wealthy. But for some reason, they seem to become involved in your harassment, and that environmental tyranny seems to follow you everywhere. If you're one of those targets dealing with that type of environmental tyranny, you could be dealing with something that is spiritual. And along with the fact that these people are very motivated to do these things to you, they're on the list. They're on the buffet as well. And when you get into what's happening within the congregations with these wolves, as Acts 20:29 has talked about, the wolves that will creep in, not sparing the flock, and they have the same methodology where they'll play psychological games with people and try to get them to believe things that are not true, or try to form them or mold them or psychologically control them. And with targets, it's the same thing. And I think the agenda is similar. In fact, I've heard a lot of things, being a targeted individual. One individual had said to me after hanging out with this person for about, I don't know, it was about a year and a half, 2 years. We're going to burn your soul. We're going to get your, and there's spiritual things happening with this. Yeah, there's government experimentation. They're trying to find out how to silence whistleblowers. They want control. They want to use psychological manipulation and trauma techniques to create a hierarchy and a slave population that's out there. They do. But at the end of the day, there's something that looms over all of the agendas, and that they are after something, and they are very, very motivated to do that. And don't forget that the people that are involved in this whole thing that you're dealing with, they're not going to get away with this. They're in the meat locker. They're the individuals who've subjugated or maybe conformed, or maybe they're just confused. Maybe they're being hijacked. But it is a buffet of souls. And when you go into this whole thing, there's something that they want. When targeted individuals are attacked, when they are triggered, when their life is sabotaged, it's not without an agenda, and it's obviously evil. And you have to see what's going on there. They could just be using you as bait, but they're still trying to demoralize you and get you. If you have an idea for a live stream or a video, put it in the comments. I'd like to thank everyone who has come in here. I'd like to thank everyone who helps support me and the channel. God bless. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.